A couple of things just from the onset about the University of St. Thomas. It's based, as I mentioned, in Minneapolis. Minneapolis, as a community, as a city in the U.S., is what I call, and a lot of people call, a hidden gem. There is a lot of employment opportunity in Minneapolis. It is a top 20 city in the United States, and there are many, many Fortune 500 companies in Minneapolis, and they go to St. Thomas and they look for qualified candidates on a very regular basis. One of the alumni at St. Thomas is the CEO of Best Buy, which is a big redistributor of technology products in the U.S. He has donated millions upon millions of dollars to St. Thomas, and they have built incredible campus facilities. The other thing about St. Thomas is that it's a private institution. It's smaller, but there is incredible interaction between faculty and student, which is very important for a lot of students. And St. Thomas has very, very strong computer science and engineering programs at the undergraduate level and at the postgraduate level. So a couple of initial takeaways in regards to St. Thomas. So why should a student come to St. Thomas? I mentioned the high-ranked engineering programs. St. Thomas is offering significant scholarships, so I'll tell you about the tuition price point, but then talk about the scholarship as well. Class sizes are small, and I mentioned the employment opportunities. 18 Fortune 500 companies are in Minneapolis, and there is a national ranking of St. Thomas at 115, which is considered an elite university. In terms of the undergraduate majors, and I want to preface this by saying that St. Thomas is very interested in Indian subcontinent students. And when universities are very interested in a particular region, what that translates into is scholarship opportunity. So on the undergraduate major side, the business program was ranked number 80 by Bloomberg. The reason why that's important is a lot of people in businesses read Bloomberg. And then in the US News, the engineering program is considered an elite program at number 34. You have electrical engineering, mechanical, computer science. And then your computer and information sciences programs are excellent programs. And you've got your information security, information systems, stats, and your traditional computer science programs. So candidates that meet the admissions criteria, that want very strong undergraduate computer science and engineering programs, it's a very, very strong school for that. Talk a little bit about the College of Business. It is AASCB accredited. It's very difficult to get that accreditation. 13 undergraduate majors. There is a focus on entrepreneurship, and there is a lot of engagement with existing startup companies in Minneapolis, if you're a student. And what they focus with the business school is engagement outside of the classroom. So there is an innovation immersion center, there is entrepreneurship type activities, and there are lots of internships, which is great once you graduate and you have experience with employers. The School of Engineering, top-ranked school, ranked number 34. They have an internship program, and you see all of the engineering programs that they have to offer. I think another very, very innovative program that draws the interest of employers is the double degree program. So you can get your engineering program, and you can also get a program in 4 years, same tuition price, in business or physics or computer science. So it's, in some cases, it's the price of 2 programs, degrees, for 1 4-year program, which is great. The computer science program, it's becoming one of the most important majors in all of the United States. The Wall Street Journal ranked the software engineer position as #1 job in the USA. Interesting that the technology sector in Minneapolis is growing faster than any other city, and Minnesota is growing faster than any other state. So what does that mean? That means that if a student is going to St. Thomas and they graduate, there are employers that would want this type of student, this type of candidate. There's also an interesting model with St. Thomas where you can move some of your undergraduate courses towards a master's degree if the student decides to stay on for a master's degree program, which is great. So on the graduate school side, 40 undergraduate programs. There's a full-time MBA program. There is a engineering program that's very highly ranked as well. You have your software engineering, education, and psychology programs, in addition to the ones that I've just mentioned. So on the admissions side, I will talk a little bit about what is here, and then I'll talk about what actually happens in a lot of cases. So your high school GPA should be a 3.0 or higher. Has St. Thomas admitted students with a 2.7 equivalency or a 2.8? The answer is yes. So one of the things that's interesting about U.S. universities is they have their requirements. In some cases, if the program is very competitive, they take above the admissions requirements. With St. Thomas, I think that they're flexible and they would consider students below a 3.0. So a 2.8 and other strong criteria would also work. English proficiency, IELTS of a 6.5 or 80 in the TOEFL. On the graduation application requirements, it really varies by program. So if you do have a question about a specific program, I can take your question, I can answer it to the best of my knowledge, and then I can move it over to the folks at St. Thomas for a better answer. One of the things that's also very important is if there is an interview with a candidate and somebody at the admissions office, there could be an IELTS waiver for students with a 3.8 GPA or higher. So, and it's happened many times. So if you've got a candidate that fits that profile, we will set up that call, that Skype call, and they could waive the IELTS immediately. If you are recruiting out of IB schools, IB diplomas also earn St. Thomas credits, so you could get a semester's worth of credits or even more if they are, the student comes from an IB school. Okay, so I will talk about the fees, and then the next slide is scholarship. So just to, right off the bat, to let everybody know, if a student from your region has a 3.0 GPA or higher, they're not going to pay that, the top fee. So the scholarships are up to $15,000 US a year. If you have a 3.0 or higher, as I've mentioned, you will get a scholarship. So that is the what we call the sticker price. But students with a 3.0 or higher will not pay that. Room and board average is around $10,000. A lot of students from this area choose off-campus housing, which is less expensive. And then you have your costs of books. And that is the maximum yearly estimate, not what typically students pay. Scholarships, very important. As I've mentioned a couple of times, you can earn scholarships as a student ranging between $5,000 and $15,000 a year. It's all about, really with St. Thomas, the GPA. They look at the GPA first. 3.0 or higher, you will likely, in every case with students from this region, they have gotten a scholarship. Scholarships are renewable, so you could earn up to $60,000 worth of scholarship for 4 years. So what does that actually mean in terms of the price that a student could pay if they're a good student? So that's the top tier tuition price. With your $15,000 scholarship, you're looking at around $24,600 tuition on an annual basis for a school that has top-ranked undergraduate engineering and computer science programs, with a very strong possibility that the student will get employed after they're done with their studies. Graduate tuition fees are very low at St. Thomas. The average is around $15,000. Most graduate students live off campus, so it's even less expensive, and you have your costs of books and supplies. So that's what the total amount could look like if the student were to have live on campus, basically. So it's very, very inexpensive on the graduate school side. So I think one of the most important takeaways, if you take away a couple of things about St. Thomas, is that the market and the city around St. Thomas, it's growing very quickly. Lots of job opportunities, and 94% of the graduates at St. Thomas are either employed, move on to graduate school, or are working as volunteers. But when you're there, you have close to 90 companies visiting the campus on a regular basis, and they recruit kids. They recruit students that are about to finish their programs. I saw it, I witnessed it. They have interviews, and students walk away with job offers. And these are very, very good companies that are growing. Companies, I mentioned Best Buy, Target, etc. So very, very strong companies and infrastructure in the Minneapolis area. Another list of your Fortune 500 companies in Minnesota that aggressively recruit students from St. Thomas. So a lot of job outcome type opportunities with this school. So if you could take away a couple of things in regards to what I've communicated to you, first one is very highly ranked undergraduate and graduate engineering programs, up to $60,000 worth of scholarship for your top students. Nobody pays the sticker price if they have a 3.0 GPA or higher. 94% of the graduates have a job or are going to graduate school. And Minneapolis is an incredible city. Wonderful city, small city, but it has all the amenities of a large city, and they have a lot of opportunities for jobs and work. Any questions that I can help answer?
So, do you have a GRE, GMAT requirement for St. Thomas for graduate courses?
Yep. So, because they vary so much by program, what I could do is I could point you to where the requirements are on the website. And what we can also do is I can take information and send you those requirements electronically as well. But we didn't list them because they're so different and there are so many different programs. But I can help you identify where those requirements are, or we can send them to you electronically.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who are currently studying, that means the admissions are given out, I-20s are given out. But St. Thomas this time did not give admissions to students who are currently studying engineering. So that means the students have to complete engineering and then apply, and then they lose out on a year.
Yeah.
I-20 also in hand.
Yeah, so this is for graduate.
That's for masters, yeah.
Yes. So and you're absolutely right, and it's a challenge that we're facing. So here's what is happening at St. Thomas specifically. The faculty, and this happens in a lot of cases, they are controlling the entire admissions process almost exclusively. There is no admissions team that helps guide them with the process. So what I can do, and I'm going to St. Thomas on the 15th of September, is if you and I can have a conversation specifically about the issue, I will go and address it with them, and they've been very flexible so far as making changes. So we have to make some other changes as far as the graduate admissions process goes at St. Thomas. But it's a point well taken, and if you and I can speak, that would be very helpful.
St. Thomas, when we send application, okay, we receive requests for some additional documentation. And in a particular case, what happened is we submitted everything, all the mark sheets, transcripts, everything was submitted. The only thing which was remaining was the completion certificate from the university.
Yeah.
Course completion. And we waited for about a month because that is when we got it. And then we submitted the letter to the university. The very next day we got a reject. The student does not qualify. So we were really wondering that why did the university ask us to give the provisional certificate when they could have made a decision based on the transcripts, because transcript pretty much has everything.
Yeah.
So not sure if that was from a faculty, from the admissions office, but that was a gap which I thought was there in the process, that we could have got about the outcome much earlier than waiting for almost 5 weeks.
Yeah, so that's a very good point, and I think I know what happened there, and I'll try to explain it, and it's not an excuse, it shouldn't have happened. So, was it for the engineering program? Yeah. So because of the engineering program's rankings, St. Thomas gets a tremendous amount of applications. And faculty, sometimes if there are a lot of candidates, they take their time. And I'm sure that over the period of time where they were reviewing that application, that applicant was in the consideration set, and they were considering other students, and they wanted to get that last piece of documentation to at least validate that they've seen it. And at that point, they realized that there were other candidates that they wanted to accept. Now, that's no excuse based on what you've just described to me. So what we want to do is, on the graduate school side, and this is our responsibility, is build more efficient ways in which we communicate with you, because it's not fair to the student, right? Why should a student wait that long? So that's our responsibility to do that. It's getting better at St. Thomas, and quite frankly, across, I think our schools are the exception for the most part, but graduate programs take a longer period of time. But we're trying to improve that with St. Thomas, given that we know how important it is to this particular market, because students from this market want to go to their graduate programs.
Yeah, because especially if you're asking for a document,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
then the student and us, we have a hope that yes, maybe it is going in the positive direction.
Yeah.
So that was something we just wanted to bring to your notice.
Yeah, and a lot of you have graduate degrees, and the decision-making process as far as being admitted was a very stressful one. I remember when I was going through it, you're waiting for something in the mail, or it was the mail when I was going to graduate school, now it's electronically. And if you get disappointed, so we're trying to avoid that process, but to your point, you're absolutely right, and it's what we're doing now to improve the outcomes for your students. So thank you for bringing it up, though. Anything else that I can help you out with as far as St. Thomas goes? And I'll be back over there as well at the booth. So thank you everybody for your time. Thanks for going through this entire process with us, so thank you.
Thanks, Jim.